All right, ready to dive deep today. We're tackling cancel culture and how it's evolved. Remember when it felt like every other day someone was getting canceled? Well, things have changed. It's not as loud or public as it used to be. Some even say cancel culture itself has been canceled. We've been looking at this piece. It's called Cancel Culture Has Been Canceled. It's got me thinking, what does it mean to be held accountable online these days?
Yeah, the landscape has definitely shifted. It's not about public apologies and viral hashtags anymore. We're seeing a move away from that, like all that performative outrage.
So if it's not about the public spectacle, what is it about now? Has it just gone underground?
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. Remember Kathy Griffin?
Yeah.
And that, well, let's just say controversial image of a former president? It sparked outrage immediately. She faced a huge backlash, lost sponsorships, and even faced death threats.
Yeah, that was a big one. It felt like a turning point for cancel culture. But you're saying things are different now.
Exactly. Fast forward to a more recent example. Jason Aldean and that song and music video. Try that in a small town. A lot of people saw it as promoting violence, even racism.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. There was so much controversy. People on social media were calling for him to be canceled.
Right, but what happened? There were some calls for boycotts. CMT pulled the video, but his career didn't implode. It may have even boosted his popularity, at least with some of his fans.
Interesting. So the outrage was there, but the outcome was different. It wasn't this career-ending blow like it used to be.
That's the point. It's not just isolated incidents either. This shift is in the public opinion, too. A 2023 Pew Research survey. It found that a majority of Americans still think people should face consequences for their actions, but fewer support public shaming as a form of accountability.
Okay, let's unpack this. People still want consequences, just not public shaming. So what does that look like? What are these new consequences? If it's not hashtags and boycotts anymore?
That's where things get interesting, and maybe a bit unsettling. Some are calling it ghost culture. The consequences are less about public outcry and more about subtle forms of ostracism and exclusion.
Hold on. Ghost culture. That sounds kind of spooky. What does that mean?
Not ghosts, literally, of course, but it does have a sort of spectral quality to it. Instead of a loud public denouncement, people just quietly cut ties, no fiery hashtags or trending topics. It's like a slow fade into digital irrelevance.
It is like you're being canceled without even realizing it. That's kind of creepy. Who decides who gets ghosted and for what?
That's where things get even more complex. Algorithms play a huge role. It's not always a conscious decision to exclude someone. It can be the platforms we use every day. Take TikTok creators. They can go viral overnight. But if they get caught up in a controversy, their views can plummet without explanation. It's not a deliberate cancellation by the platform. It's the algorithm silently deciding to stop promoting their content.
That's unsettling. So it's not this campaign to cancel someone. It's algorithms making decisions behind the scenes. That can have a huge impact on someone's visibility and reach.
Precisely. And it's not just social media platforms. These algorithms are everywhere. They influence what we see in our search results, the news articles that pop up in our feeds, even job recommendations we get.
Wow, so they're shaping our online experience in ways we might not even realize. And if they're being used to quietly push people out, that's a big deal. We're talking about potential limitations on free speech and access to information, all without transparency or due process.
You're right. It's crucial to understand these algorithms and the potential consequences, because the line between legitimate content moderation and subtle censorship can be very blurry.
This ghost culture thing is more than a trendy term. It's raising questions about accountability, transparency, and the power of these algorithms that are shaping our online lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even talked about companies yet, how they're adapting, often opting for quiet rebranding and damage control rather than public apologies.
Okay, before we go any further, let's rewind a bit. We've been talking about this shift away from traditional cancel culture and this emergence of ghost culture. But is this really a new phenomenon? Haven't people always been trying to control narratives and silence those they disagree with?
That's a great point. It's tempting to see this as a digital age thing.
Yeah.
But the impulse to ostracize and punish those who deviate from norms has been around for centuries.
Yeah, our source made this comparison to the Puritans. It's like they were the OG cancel culture with their stocks and scarlet letters.
Exactly. Yeah. Public shaming and social control. Not new concepts. What's changed is the speed.
Yeah.
The scale. It happens so fast in the digital age.
Right. It's like we've traded the town square for the Twitterverse. Instead of Rotten Tomatoes, we have angry tweets and downvote armies.
That's a great analogy. And the consequences can be devastating, just like back then. It can affect your reputation, your livelihood, even your mental health.
So if ghost culture is so pervasive and potentially harmful, what can we do? It feels like we're up against these invisible forces, these algorithms that we don't fully understand.
That's the challenge, right? It's hard to fight something you can't see or control, but that doesn't mean we're powerless. Our source has some practical advice about navigating this new landscape. It starts with digital self-preservation.
Digital self-preservation, so like backing up our data, making sure we have strong passwords.
That's part of it. But it goes deeper than that. It's being mindful of our digital footprint, taking steps to protect ourselves.
Okay, so what does that look like? What are some examples?
Well, maybe it's time for some digital spring cleaning. Think about those old social media posts from your college days, the ones that seemed funny then, but might not reflect who you are now.
Oh, man. Definitely guilty of that. Some Facebook photos I'd rather not resurface.
We've all been there. The internet never forgets. But you can curate what it remembers about you. Go through your old posts, delete anything that could come back to haunt you.
Good advice. Out with the old, in with the new, digitally speaking. What else?
Another key strategy. Be more deliberate about what you share online. Think before you post. Ask yourself, is this something I'm going to be comfortable with? Will people be seeing this 5, 10 years from now? The article calls it the 3-second rule. Pause for 3 seconds. Consider the consequences before hitting that share button.
I like that, the 3-second rule. Simple reminder to be mindful. But let's be real. We all make mistakes. What if we slip up? Is there a right way to apologize without feeding the outrage machine?
That's a tough one. Apologies can be tricky these days. But the source offers some advice. First, avoid those generic apologies, the ones that have become so common. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if anyone was offended.
Yeah. Those apologies always sound so hollow, like you're not really taking responsibility.
Exactly. A genuine apology should acknowledge the harm, take responsibility without excuses, express a willingness to learn and do better.
So it's about being sincere, being specific, showing you understand the impact.
Precisely. And it's important to remember, even a genuine apology can be weaponized online. People can take your words out of context, screenshot them, and use them against you.
So even if you apologize the right way, it might not matter. That's pretty discouraging.
It's not about guaranteeing you'll never face consequences. It's about mitigating the damage, showing you're willing to be accountable. But it's also recognizing that what's offensive is always changing. What's acceptable today could be problematic tomorrow.
So you have to be mindful, authentic, and maybe a little strategic. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It can be overwhelming, no doubt. But here's the thing. Cancel culture, even this mutated form, is a reflection of values and power. Who has the power to define what's acceptable? Who gets to decide the consequences?
I see. It's not just about avoiding cancellation personally. It's about understanding the social forces at play, how they're shaping how we interact online.
Exactly. And this is where the conversation needs to go further. Beyond individual actions and responsibility, we need to be talking about the systems, the ones that amplify certain voices, while silencing others. We need to question the algorithms, the ones shaping our perceptions, influencing our decisions.
So instead of focusing on who gets canceled, we should be asking why these things exist, what impact they're having on society.
That's the heart of the matter, because this isn't just about celebrities or influencers. It's about the future of our digital public sphere, how we want to connect in this complex online world.
This conversation is getting really interesting. But before we go there, let's go back to something you said earlier, this idea that what's considered offensive is always evolving. That seems crucial, especially when we're talking about long-term consequences.
It does. It brings up so many ethical questions. Are we creating a culture where people are afraid to express themselves, afraid to be judged by future standards?
Right. Like, how are we supposed to know what's going to be offensive 5, 10, 20 years from now? It's a moving target.
Exactly. And this is where the conversation needs to change. It's not just about calling people out or canceling them. We need understanding, empathy, and growth. Create spaces where people can make mistakes, learn from them, and have a chance to redeem themselves.
Sounds good in theory, but how do we actually do that? The internet is a pretty unforgiving place.
It's not easy, that's for sure. But it starts with recognizing we're all on a journey. We're all capable of growth. We need to engage with people who have different viewpoints, even if we find them challenging or offensive. It's about difficult conversations, with respect and a willingness to listen.
So it's not about silencing opposing voices. It's about engaging with them constructively. That's a big shift from the cancel culture mentality.
It is. It requires maturity and self-awareness, recognizing our own biases,
Yeah.
being open to different perspectives, understanding that sometimes we need to agree to disagree.
You're advocating for a more nuanced approach, a more compassionate approach to online discourse. But is that realistic in today's polarized climate?
It might be idealistic,
Hmm?
but I don't think it's impossible. I think people are getting tired of the outrage cycle. They want more meaningful conversations. They're starting to realize that this constant conflict isn't healthy or productive.
That makes me think about something we haven't discussed. The impact on us as individuals. We've talked about the consequences for those who get canceled. What about the rest of us? This constant fear of saying the wrong thing, feeling like we're walking on eggshells online. It's got to be taking a toll.
Absolutely. It creates fear and self-censorship. People are afraid to speak their minds, to share their ideas. They're afraid of being judged or ostracized. That's not good for a healthy society.
Right. It stifles creativity and innovation, makes people less willing to take risks or challenge things.
Exactly. And it can lead to isolation and loneliness. People feel like they have to constantly watch what they say and do, which prevents them from making real connections.
So what's the takeaway? If cancel culture is fading, have we achieved a more forgiving online world? Or have we traded one form of social control for another, maybe an even more insidious one?
That's the question, isn't it? The answer is complex. The decline of public shaming might seem like a positive step towards healthier online interactions. But ghost culture, with its subtle ostracism and algorithmic manipulation, presents new challenges. We may be moving away from public shaming, but the desire to punish and exclude those who don't fit in, that hasn't disappeared. It's evolved and become more insidious, operating in the shadows, often without transparency or due process.
Like we've gone from a public execution to a secret trial. Same outcome, but less transparent and maybe less fair.
That's a powerful way to put it. It highlights the need for a deepened conversation about the ethics of online accountability and the role of technology. In shaping our social interactions, we need to ask tough questions about the power of algorithms, the limits of free speech online, and how we can create online spaces that are both safe and inclusive.
This has been eye-opening. Feels like we just scratched the surface of a much larger issue. But one thing's for sure, we can't be passive observers. We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to speak up for the kind of online world we want.
Well said. The cancellation process might be canceled, but the internet remembers. Keep those receipts clean. And more importantly, remember to be kind, be mindful, and be human.
Words to live by online. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We hope this gave you something to think about as you navigate the online world. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.